Welcome, friends. It's almost midnight, and you've found your way to the PikeCast. Come along as we careen through the catalog of the most formative horror writer of our young adult days, Christopher Pike. From adult perspectives, we'll revisit these YA books our parents probably would never have let us read had they known what lie inside. We tackle one book per episode in a freewheeling and unbiased chat. So grab your battered paperback, pull the flashlight from the kitchen drawer, climb under your bed covers, and devour a good book with us.
Greetings, fellow Pikers, and welcome to the PikeCast. I'm Cooper Beckett, and as always, I'm happy to be joined by my lovely co-hosts.
Hello, I'm Cassie.
Hi, I'm Becca.
Today, we are digging into Christopher Pike's 1994 novel, The Last Vampire. While it is the first of what would become a sprawling series, today we are tackling book one only, and are going to be breaking it down in great detail, spoiling each and every plot twist, so consider yourself warned. If you're enjoying the PikeCast, please leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. This week, we welcome back to the PikeCast one of our favorite Pikers, author Nat Edwards, who is also often T.C. Parker. Welcome back, Nat.
Thank you.
I mean, you were so much fun last time. We had to have you back, like, immediately.
Well, I'm extremely excited to be back, and as before, laden with opinions. So.
Well, I mean, that is one of the reasons why we have you back here. You have very strong and passionate feelings, and that is a good way to go for a podcast. Because what is a podcast if not an airing of very strong, passionate feelings?
It's true, and I'm ready to let them out. So let's begin.
Why don't we move into Magic Fire, our first section, and we'll have Cassie read the back of The Last Vampire for us.
Okay. She thought she was the last vampire. Elisa Pern is a 5,000-year-old vampire. For ages, she has hunted humanity, loved humanity, but now someone hunts her. Who is this person? What is he or she? Another vampire? Elisa is not sure. She thought she was the last of her kind. Elisa has only one lead to follow. A detective, Mike Riley, has tried to blackmail her. In haste, before she could learn everything he knew, she killed him. Now she must go after the detective's son and find out what his father knew. 50 centuries old, and she must enter high school and befriend Ray Riley, a handsome, shy boy who will attract her like no mortal has in centuries. Ray will make Elisa think the unthinkable, to make another of her kind, something she hasn't done since ancient times. But will Elisa use Ray to help protect her from the mysterious enemy? Or will she just use him as bait? Dun, dun, dun.
You know, I'm actually really happy I didn't read that, because I was certain Detective Michael Riley was going to be the primary antagonist, and then he just died. So not having read the back of the book gave me a better experience. Okay, let's talk about the artwork. Here in the U.S., we have another great Brian Kotzky painting, which is a blonde girl holding on to a scared boy's neck. And it looks like they're in front of, I don't know, hell or a canyon, a barbecue. I don't know. One of those saunas where it's all heat rocks.
You're making it sound much lovelier than it actually is.
I don't know.
Actual literal hell.
Yeah, it looks dangerous, but we can pretend like it's a spa.
I'm imagining some kind of, like Central Californian resort where like people are
exactly
in the desert sunning themselves and like having nice hot massages.
They like steam the vaginas through the volcanic rock.
Oh. I've actually just Googled it and I'm staring at it right now, and it's so vaginal. Oh my god. It's as if he is being reborn. Oh my god!
Now, I want to point out that our depiction of Ray Riley here is wearing the Tiki Torch Trumper uniform, the white polo shirt and the khakis. So there is that.
He looks like he should be named Chad.
He does look like
Chad.
I see them.
And I feel like Elisa looks like Rebecca De Mornay,
Oh
which that's
God,
not a
yes.
bad thing. That's a good thing.
She is
But she
rocking
also
the
looks
cradle
like
and
she
pulling him
doesn't
back
have
into
a
that vagina.
torso.
I feel like I'm getting Nicole
Wait, what?
Kidman vibes.
Nicole
Yeah.
Kidman?
Oh, I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's sort of To Die For era Nicole Kidman.
Oh yes.
Like
yes.
the others or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's a queen.
All right. So, do these accurately capture what is inside?
It's
No.
this is so much more focused on Ray than it should be, I think.
I like Nat's flat no.
There are so many reasons why I like it. It's fascinatingly vaginal, but there's no bearing whatsoever on the narrative. You're right, it's not about Ray. There's a bigger problem here, which is more to do with the naming of the book, which is that she is not the last vampire and knows it all the way through the book. Like, she knows that there are other vampires.
The other guy's dead.
Yeah. I mean, she could be saying that she's the last in terms of the final of the line because she's not making more.
I suppose she's the last of her. Yeah, I suppose she's the last of her vampires. But there are demonstrably others. I feel like there was a disconnect there between content and marketing.
And the back of the book, it's accurate, but it's way too informative.
With massive spoilers. I feel like if you read that, you kind of know about 3/4 of what happens in the book.
Yeah. So I just don't read any of the backs. Basically, I'm treating it the way I did when I was much younger and buying these, is I look at the cover, and if it's intriguing, I buy it. And here the cover is not so intriguing, but the name The Last Vampire is intriguing, so there's that.
Well,
Maybe the cover is when they're in the sauna and she's giving him a nice little massage. And
a nice little Adam's apple massage, because that is the best of all massages.
He was tense in that one area.
Yeah. Well, and if you look, the tagline is, "This time someone is hunting her," but it doesn't appear to be that on the cover. So there's a lot of schizophrenic feels here.
Well, there's also, have you guys seen the UK cover for this?
I have not. We should look. Yeah.
So the UK cover for this that I have in the paperback that I ordered to prepare for this podcast is, as well as the ebook, it's not the one that I remember having in the 90s. I can't actually remember what that one looked like, but this one is really misleading because it's just got a great big snake on the cover. Now, obviously, there's
cobra, right?
Yeah,
I see that.
There's a bit of a section with the cobras in the pit, but I feel like it's a relatively minor bit of the story.
Well, hold on. It's still using the same tag. It's a giant fucking snake, and it says, "This time someone is hunting her." What does that mean?
Well, because she says even like the guy as a vampire, he has more in common with snakes than with bats. So she says he has a lot in common with snakes. So he would be the snake that's hunting her.
Okay.
It seems pretty literal to me.
But I mean, no, but
I don't know if I'm like.
But the word "her" refers to whom on that cover? No one.
The last vampire.
Or a snake.
Not the last cobra. Come on.
No, that's what I'm. Okay, fine.
Also, just to go back, because you're saying that she knew she wasn't the last vampire, but she thought she was. Like, she thought that guy died because they burned him at the stake or something. So.
Oh yeah, they did burn him at the.
Yeah, she thought she was the last one. She thought she was all alone, and her only mission in life was just to not make more of her. And then she starts getting hunted, and she's like, "Oh shit, who's this bitch?" Like, so I feel like that part on the back. I mean, maybe she was a little more like classy about it than I just was.
I felt like she knew that he was alive, and therefore the whole thing was just. But no, you're right. Actually,
yeah,
I feel bad
she
now.
thought he was. I'm really enjoying here the wide variety of novels called The Last Vampire on Google here. Wheatley Stryber of Communion fame wrote a book called The Last Vampire. But my favorite that has come up on this Google search is completely unrelated, and it's called Vampires Like It Hot by Lindsay Sands. And it has what looks like a blood spritzer in a wine glass. and
If
is
that were the
strong.
title of this book with this cover, that would actually make more
Vampires
sense.
Like It Hot? Yeah, sauna, yeah. Or hell.
Or
Sure.
hell.
While you all are looking for Vampires Like It Hot, I'm going to move into the next section, the Midnight Club, and we'll start talking about the characters we have here. So let's start with our last, but not really vampire. No, she is really a vampire. She is not really last.
Just to clarify.
She's a
Yeah,
fake vampire.
my phrasing was poor. So Elisa is 5,000 years old. I was very excited. We have another bisexual character in Christopher Pike,
Yes.
because Elisa is bi. And I mean, that goes with the tradition of vampirism. That really, this is like Interview with the Vampire for high school. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, because that's cool.
How did you get it in real time?
I added it to the chat.
I love it.
I feel like I could have done with her being a bit more bisexual.
Oh, of
I think
course.
rather than no,
Sure.
For sure.
I feel like there was the
I can always
implication
say
of like
that.
this is the nature of vampires, you know, the men and women through history. But there was a lot of her seducing high school boys, which is a separate point that I think we should come back to, perhaps under the problematic section. But like it felt like
She does fall in love very, very quickly.
Yeah, she does. I think that happens a lot in
and-
the Pike book, though.
She specifies that's not the norm for her. Like, she hasn't felt that way in centuries, and it was just because he might be like some sort of reincarnation of her like first love.
Okay, I was gonna ask that if that was like what they were trying to hint at, like if it was a reincarnation.
But he
think
isn't
so.
ultimately, right?
He doesn't. So they say that they know each other. They feel like they've known each other before. And that's just like a common theme that he has in the books that do like completely state that it's reincarnation. I don't think it did here. It was just implied, so that's what I took it.
Well, that's slightly less weird then, because I was reading it all the way through with like, at no other point in her entire history has she felt the presence of her husband. You know what I mean? Like, it was all just a bit convenient. I mean, obviously,
It is.
If you're 5,000 years old and you're incredibly strong and you're as arrogant as she is, I mean, every other page she is banging on about how great she is, about, you know, I'm wonderful at archery, I'm the smartest woman you'll ever meet, but you'll never know it, except me telling you right now. But like, she's obsessed with her own capability. She's strong. She's really fucking old. Why is she not doing other things that are better than this? Why on earth would you go to Oregon to high school? I mean, if that were me, I would just like find that kid and kill him and then just go and do something better. Do you know what I mean? I'd be in Rio. Why are you doing that? There is no
Because she promised she wouldn't.
But she could be like, I don't know, in Paris or something fun, and instead she's in Oregon. Like, why? I get it. I get what you're putting down, Nat. Like
in Oregon.
Yeah,
Like,
I feel like vampires like the Pacific Northwest because it's rainy.
That's true. I mean, Twilight, they're in like Washington because of the rain.
But I thought she was fine with daylight.
She is, but she doesn't like it.
I feel like a woman that old, she could go to the Nordics. Do you know what I mean? She doesn't have to go to Oregon. There are other options here. And
well, she does want to go to Pluto.
Oh.
In the most bizarre non sequitur ever.
Yes. I forgot about that. I love it.
Because of all places, Pluto.
It's like no one's told her that Finland is. Do you know what I mean? It's like, there is a midway point between Oregon and Pluto, and it's somewhere in Scandinavia.
And that is Finland. It's the earthbound Pluto, apparently.
I actually, sorry, just to clarify, I've been to Helsinki many times and I love it. But it's cold and dark. You know, it's ticking my Pluto boxes. So apologies to Finns out there.
So how do we feel about her as a character?
Well, I have to go with Nat. She is very arrogant. She really likes herself, which I guess, I mean, like, yay, confidence, I'm proud of you, but I feel like it's, like, more on a more, like, annoying level. But, like, I do like the fact that she doesn't mind getting dirty, because there's this part where she's, like, burying Riley, like, the cop Riley, and she's like, my clothes get a bit dirty, but that's okay, because I have a washing machine and detergent at home. And I mean, like, we love I almost said a bad word. We love a woman who likes to get dirty, you know what I'm saying?
Hold on, I want to know what you were just about to say.
Oh, I call people bitches in the friendliest way,
Oh,
and I almost called her a
you
bitch.
can call
But
her a bitch.
I just don't think it's okay. Like, I don't want people to be like, "Wow, she's calling women bitches," because like I call everyone.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. You
I
don't
feel like
have to.
if you have that sort of like relationship with somebody, then it's totally
Right.
fine.
Like, I always say
Yeah.
I love you, bitch.
Okay.
Like, that's just who I am.
I ain't never gonna stop loving you, bitch.
Exactly.
I think personally, she was a little arrogant, but I liked it because if I were the only one of my kind and I were as powerful and rich and cool as her, I'd be like, yeah, fuck you, I'm the best pianist in the entire world. I'm smarter than you. Like every chance I got, I do that sometimes now to my boyfriend, and he hates it. And can you imagine me as a vampire? I would be the coolest ever. Like, so I like her. She's like goals for me, like even more than Alexa.
Oh
like
no.
Yeah.
I love her. Yeah, no, I love her. And she's not crazy too, which is like a nice part of it.
Yeah.
Like she just lives
No,
forever.
I do like the sanity actually, because quite often you get, especially like the Anne Rice vampires, where they've lived for thousands of years and they just start to hate themselves. Why would you be consumed with self-hate? It's like you're eternal and also can do anything. Like, what's wrong with you? There's an alternative to being plunged into existential despair. You could just like go and have fun. You know what I mean? Or like learn loads of languages or practice your piano. There's endless possibilities. I like that she's not consumed with self-hate.
Like her,
that's what really struck me in reading this, is because I'm used to now, like I really got into vampires around Buffy time. And ever since then, really, society has done its best to neuter vampires and make them tragic romantic figures, but also take away every bit of danger they have with them. And what I loved about this is, yeah, she's arrogant, but she's also capable. She can back up her arrogance, and she is also a monster. With vampires, I want the monster.
Right.
Same.
She gives me bad bitch vibes. You can keep this bitch in there. But
yeah. Okay, thank you.
She's giving me bad bitch vibes when she's like, I do love to fight, it's true, almost as much as I love to kill. Yeah, well, okay, she loses bad bitch vibes after that. But, like, I really like when she talks about how she enjoys killing. Like, yeah, it's like, do it. Anyway, sorry. I really like murder.
Actually do that much. I could, in the same way that I could have done with her being, like, a bit more visibly bisexual, I could also have done with her being a bit more visibly murderous. There's a lot of alluding to her liking to kill people, but then there's comparatively few actual killings and maimings, so I could have done with a bit more of that.
Yeah,
I feel like,
well, she does kill that one guy early on, and it has one of the greatest things here. Oh, he stays in that position the whole time I drink, hypnotized with the sensation, which to him feels as if he is being caressed from the inside out with the tip of my nails.
That doesn't sound good to me.
It seemed uncomfortable. Like, I just got uncomfortable just now. Like,
oh no! See, for me, that sounds like having my back scratched, but inside.
Okay, that's not. Oh no! See, inside you. If you were to just left that at like my back being scratched, I would have been like, I can dig it, but like inside, no, thank you. Like,
no,
can you imagine how squishy it would be too in there, like under your fingernails? Just how that would feel. Just like think of like putting your fingers with long nails into Jello. Just
I want to die.
Gross. Yeah. Ugh.
Okay, so I was the only one intrigued by that. That's fair.
It feels like, like if you took your skin and you turned it inside out and then put bristles in it and then put it back on. Like that. Yeah, like that horrible, like sort of like somehow inside out werewolf effect. That's how I feel.
Bristles on my inside.
Oh.
Okay.
Sorry, Cooper.
Sorry, this has become like the anti-ASMR, hasn't it?
I mean, it's not great. Yeah. She specifically says she does not think of herself as a sad vampire, which is lovely. Yeah. I mean, she's not Louis, she's Lestat.
Lestat gets kind of sad sometimes.
Yeah, but mostly he's just, a hedonistic, does whatever he wants kind of guy.
That's fair.
He's most of the vampires in the Vampire Chronicles. So like that just is irritating. It's another one of those like, oh, I'm so wonderful, I'm so beautiful, but it's like, actually, have you met everybody? There are probably You know what I mean? Like, in the same way that we can't prove that she is indeed the best pianist, I feel like, if you go to like Carnegie Mellon, you'll probably find somebody that's a little bit more skilled, especially if she's never actually had tuition. Do you know what I mean? She's just assuming that she's the best. I digress. So in the Vampire Chronicles, the best one for me is the in the third one, the Queen of the Damned. That's like the one that's really, really old, not the one that's the Queen of the Damned, but the one that's like half of the twins. That sort of kept all the kind of genealogical records of like every vampire ever. And yeah, I feel like sorry, this is actually nothing to do with The Last Vampire now I think about it, but I feel like if I were to be a vampire, I would want to be her, like ancient and powerful, but kind of knocking around in my back cave keeping records. This is absolutely nothing to do with The Last Vampire.
That sounds like such a good, like, nerdy vampire. I love it. Like that. I feel like I would love that vampire.
And you could just
we should have a whole book about that.
That's what I wanted. I wanted there to be another book, but then it turns out that she'd like exhausted her story, and then the other books are about like fucking Lestat. Who cares? I want that genealogy. Do you know what I mean? I want her like enjoying going exploring in the Amazon and like cataloging things botanically.
You're just gonna have to write it, like
Yeah.
Well, funny enough, so my next book actually is a lesbian splatterpunk western, which may or may not have vampires in it.
I cannot wait.
Very nice. Okay, let's move on to Detective Michael Riley, who I very foolishly thought was going to be a major part. He is our slovenly, probably drug-using antagonist for a few minutes anyway. He does eat greasy burgers. We don't know where from.
Probably McDonald's, though.
Probably McDonald's, yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny because it opens like a noir. Someone walks into a detective office, and rarely in noir is the detective immediately murdered.
Oh, actually, that's a good point. Just thinking about things that I did like about her. While I did find it annoying that I felt like she was bragging about things that she couldn't necessarily do as well as she thought she could, I did like the way that she killed him with her foot.
Yeah.
It was premeditated too. She just stretches out a leg and she's like, "Yeah, I'm relaxed." Bam, bitch! Now you're dead.
Oh, I love that. It's like,
I love it.
wouldn't want to be able to do that with like the tip of their foot. Do you know what I mean? It's just
such power.
Oh.
I kind of feel bad for the guy because, like, well, no, I'm glad that she killed him. I'm glad she did what she did. However, like, because he was giving me bad vibes, but then, like, when you find out that he was just doing it for his son, it's like, damn, like.
Well, I mean, he may have thought he was just doing it for his son, but who gets $1 million or whatever? I don't remember the amount, but just for his son? No, he was going to go out and buy a nice car. No, he was a dirty guy.
I don't blame him though. I would buy myself a nice car too if I had $1 million.
Yeah, I would also, and I also feel like he was just being opportunistic, like in a way that a lot of other business people usually are. Like they get an opportunity and then they're like, I feel like your competitor can match this and maybe do even better. And then they try to, which it's not, I'm not saying it's not shady,
right.
But I feel like it doesn't really necessarily, in my mind at least, make him so much of an antagonist. It's just like a kind of a creep.
Yeah, well.
I concur.
But wouldn't he know that she was... all this stuff about him, like, being warned about how dangerous she was. Like, why did he think that it was a good idea to, like, meet her on his own, even with a gun? Like,
well, I think he just assumed that was exaggeration because she is just this blonde-haired, blue-eyed teenage girl.
You can never underestimate a bad bitch, I tell you.
I think that's the thing. I feel like if there's one thing that I've learned from just decades of Hollywood and indeed Buffy, it's like if you see somebody that looks young and innocent, they're probably going to murder you with their toes. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's another baffling stupidity that made me quite irritated early on. But I am pleased that he died. So.
And then he gives us over to the actual other main character of the book, Ray Riley, which I just hate names that are, unless you're John Waters doing it with a wink, characters should not have the same letter in their first and last name. They just shouldn't.
Also, he's a really shit character. I feel like if he was going to be in a John Waters film, he'd be like the son in Serial Mom. Do you know what I mean? Like he's like a parody of a real human being.
Well, but I memean, if you're played by Matthew Lillard, that really elevates you immediately to a different classification.
Well, that is true, actually. It just, I feel like if this were ever, this has probably been a TV show or a film or something, hasn't it? Did I imagine that, or has it been like adapted already? No, it hasn't, has it? It's the only pilot that's been adapted has Fall into Darkness. No, so were this to be adapted, weirdly, I feel like the young Matthew Lillard would be way too charismatic, complicated.
Well, yeah, Matthew Lillard has a manic energy that this guy does not have.
This guy has no energy.
I was muted, first of all. I was muted. I didn't realize. So I was going to say Marvel would disagree with you for your thing about naming people like Peter Parker and all of those.
Yeah.
Like
I know.
And I think Josh Hartnett from like the 90s would be a really good Ray Riley because he's got that like he's attractive, but he's also very basic and like not like he just seems to. I don't mean this I'm sorry, Josh, if you're listening, but he's just got this dull sort of thing.
Why do we assume that all these teenage heartthrobs are listening to the podcast?
It's because one of us one day. Yeah, it's one of us one day is just going to become wildly famous. I'm positive of it. And so they're going to be like, remember back when? And everybody's going to go back and listen to the podcast. So
Yeah.
I don't know which of us it'll be.
Right, Matthew Lillard will learn of my existence.
I think even Christopher Pike is irritated by him because he is cut in the mode of many handsome modern youths with curly brown hair and a chiseled profile. It feels like Pike is saying, yeah, he's generic, but she loves him, so enjoy.
For no reason, though. I mean, if she was going to get with anyone, you would think it would be... I mean, it's slightly creepier as well, because isn't he like 16 or something, or 15?
He is 16. Seymour?
Yeah, like the young geeky one. I feel like the young geeky one is like the one that she actually has some sort of emotional connection with, and she finds slightly interesting and wants to be in his company, whereas the other one, like, looks kind of generically hot, but also is the son, and she needs his password. But then when she's got the password, like, just kill him. I would.
Instead of making him the first vampire she makes.
Yes.
It's
just not worth it.
Let's talk about almost a non-character, Pat, who is clearly his girlfriend and is a scrawny thing, according to the introduction. She's nothing. She is not a character. Right. She is just there to provide the barest of barriers to their relationship, as far as I can see.
She lasted like 2 chapters, and then I forgot about her. Because Christopher Pike also forgot about her, so...
Yeah. Well, she also, like, I don't know whether you guys found this a bit difficult to believe, especially, I mean, like, I'm old now, so I'm kind of mellow, but, like, when I was a teenager, I feel like, I was a little bit more angry. She sees this other girl going after her bloke, and she's just like, don't take him, and then, fuck it, rolls over. It's not like, she doesn't do a Jolene, you know what I mean? And then there's there's a bit of a Jolene early on, but then the Jolene energy just kind of ebbs away, and she's like, I'm so sorry, just take him. I don't know, you know what I mean? Did anybody else find that quite unconvincing?
Yeah. Well, and she also gets to oogle Elisa's naked body in the Pikeism shower/locker room undressing.
I forgot about that, but she does, and she compliments it, right? I can't remember what she says, but I feel like she's checking her out, and she's like, yeah, well done. And it's... Again, given Elisa's apparently latent bisexuality, I feel like they could have done more with that.
Yeah, they could have had a relationship.
I wish they would have been much better.
The book is also dedicated to Dr. Pat.
Ooh.
Oh. I missed that.
Huh. I really just want an annotation next to all his dedications in his books, because
just explain.
There is some depth here that we're not getting as readers, I think. Let's talk about Seymour. He's 16 years old. He's brilliant. He's apparently channeling some historic relationship, maybe. I mean, what a wonderful coincidence that 2 people from her past life have reincarnated to the same high school in Oregon.
Who is he meant to be? I can't remember.
I have no idea, but there's got to be something there, right?
Well, this is another one of those things.
Spencer.
Yeah.
The Midnight Club Spencer.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that before they talked about how Seymour has AIDS. Like, I had that comparison, and then when they said that, I was like, wait, really? Like, did you just talk this character over?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I did wonder whether they were building him up to be something, and it's another one of those things where, like, without knowing what goes on in the later books, it's difficult to know whether he was just sort of introduced in a slightly crap way, or whether he was introduced subtly with a view to him becoming more central later. Right. You know what I mean? Because it felt like they could have done a lot more with him, or Christopher Pike could have done a lot more with him than was done in that book. So possibly if more is done with him later, I feel like that would You know what I mean?
I mean, if I'm plotting a sequel, and I do have no idea what happens in these sequels, I'm saying that her healing of him didn't make him a vampire, but gave him some level of vampiric power. And that becomes important in future books. That's what I write.
I can get behind that. I would like that if that's what happens.
I think so. I think like some kind of psychic vampire energy.
Yeah.
Right. There'd be some.
And he's already got some of that because he's dreaming about her fighting these massive battles, and like he's got something is going on with him. But I mean, he's a pretty stock character in Pike's work. He clearly feels a little bit like the Pike self insertion character. He is the dork. He is the awkward character. Randomly, he has AIDS, which has now been a boogeyman in 2 books from the same year. I'm pretty sure. When did Midnight Club come out?
Oh, do you know? I think it probably was 94.
So twice in 1 year, he uses AIDS as a boogeyman, which I get it. You know, it was a boogeyman then. It just seems like a surprising thing because you don't see it in fiction very often at all.
Well, I think also it was slightly... I wasn't a huge fan of the way that it was done here versus Midnight Club. It's like in Midnight Club, it's like Spencer got sick because he had sex, which is obviously like the vast majority of HIV transmissions are sexual, right? So whereas in this one, it's like, oh, poor unfortunate victim. I feel like it's creating that dichotomy, you know, that sort of like innocent victim versus like brought it on yourself sort of dichotomy that I just really don't like. And I feel like...
No, I get that, yeah.
Especially having kind of been around, you know, in sort of the 90s when there was still a lot of kind of AIDS paranoia, obviously like pre-PrEP and pre a lot of the sort of treatments that are out now, like that kind of innocent victim versus dirty, brought it on yourself, you know, that kind of judgment. It's not explicitly here, but I feel like it still could have been done better. I feel like even just inserting it in here is problematic in that sort of the kind of cultural and social context.
Well, he's basically the kid from Mr. Belvedere that got AIDS, and then there was a whole very special episode about it. From a transfusion, specifically. It was a reminder that people can get AIDS without being sexually active, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, okay, yes, you're right.
But sorry, I feel like I'm being hypercritical of it, but I felt like Midnight Club, sorry, it's just the tip of the iceberg of my hypercriticism, but like, I feel like in Midnight Club, it made sense. I feel like those are the stories that I'm more familiar with. You know what I mean? Like that they're
right.
This is the primary route of transmission, whereas blood transfusions, deeply unfortunate, terrible with the the contaminations that did happen, but they were relatively rare comparatively. Statistically, such a small. Sorry, I've got a couple of friends that are HIV epidemiologists as well, so I've got quite strong opinions about this too. But like, it's not representative. And I feel like, given the cultural climate at the time that it was written and released, there was an element of responsibility on whoever's going to be writing about this stuff to not create that dichotomy, even in a simple way.
Yeah, that's true. That could fall in the problematic section then, because creating the implication that routine medical procedures could lead to AIDS, could, in especially impressible young people, lead to a massive distrust of the medical community.
Well, I think also it does just create this kind of us and them. I mean, I think you can read it 2 ways. Obviously, a lot of the social commentary, and certainly a lot of the social commentary around media constructions of HIV/AIDS in the 90s and 80s are kind of, on the one hand, it's good that you've got effectively kind of straight white America or straight white Britain in the case of the UK, like being shown that this is a disease that people can get. You don't need to be X class of person in order to be vulnerable to this. This is a thing that your kids could get. You know what I mean? It's a disease, right. Therefore it's transmissible in the same way that diseases are in general. But equally, it feels really problematic to just buy into that innocent victim thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. In that context, I find it really problematic. Put it in the problematic section.
Yes, agreed. Otherwise, he is a fairly stock Pike character.
Yes.
Which is fine, because I like this character. every time he shows up in a Pike book. I like this character, but he is fairly stock. Let's talk about Mr. Castor.
Speaking of problematic.
Well, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
he gives us another in a row of lecherous teachers, or teachers crossing the boundaries very flagrantly. And Elisa has no fucks to give him at all. When he walks in, he is a sad-looking example of a modern educator, and is attractive in an aftershave commercial sort of way. But he's been drinking. I love that he is only 30. So he's 30. That's 11 years younger than me.
That sounded so sad, Cooper. Are you going to be okay, buddy?
I mean, I still like to think of the adults in these books as like adults.
Right.
And adults are older than me. I mean, the kids are younger than me. I'm fine with that. But the adults are older than
blow
me.
to the gut there is that he's 30, but might die soon because of his drinking.
Yeah, right.
He's 30, but not got much time left. It's
His liver is close to 70, according to
Yes.
Elisa.
Also, not to keep banging this drum, but why doesn't she kill him? Like, he's this horrible predator. Why does she not put a foot in his?
She
Do you know what I
wanted
mean?
I do love the scene where she almost kills him, though, where she's got the arrow knocked and is moving it toward him, and then Seymour uses his weird powers to know what she's thinking and tells her not to.
He shouldn't have stopped her.
He shouldn't.
I don't know if I'd have listened. To be honest, I'd have killed him in the classroom. Like, he's right there. There's no way that anyone would believe that it was her foot through his ribcage. You know what I mean? She could just have killed him, and then she could have said that, like, an animal escaped and attacked him or something.
Yes.
Like,
I was just standing there and he died.
wait, does Oregon have bears? Are there bears in Oregon? So. Yeah, I feel like a bear could have come in and eaten him.
Just right into the classroom. Yeah,
like it happened. So in California, cougars come in sometimes. There was a cougar in Cassie, I'm so sorry. I'm not suggesting that there are cougars on your block.
No, I wasn't scared. It's okay.
Well, remember, in 24 season 2, that was a whole subplot, was his daughter being chased by a cougar in California.
Oh my God.
It was a terrible subplot.
What do we think about Slim?
I have no
Which one is
thoughts
he
on Slim.
again?
Slim is the guy who's for whatever reason communicating via fax.
He's like the go-between, right?
Yeah, he's the one that picks her up at the pier with his German woman enforcer, who I don't think gets a name.
Yes.
He's supposed to be this menacing character, but then is like really this whole book is just people dramatically underestimating our last vampire,
Which I love.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah.
It would have been. I feel like if she hadn't been able to defend herself in those situations, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much.
I will say the scene at the gas station was just gloriously violent.
I loved the violence of that bathroom.
Yes, it was brilliant. Actually, and once again, there was brain matter on the wall.
Yeah. People get their faces ripped off in this book, their heads smashed. Yeah, there's brain matter everywhere. Like, there's a lot of violence in this book.
Once again, I wish that the entire book would have been as violent as this one scene. Like, I feel like I've said that about a different book, Monster.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Monster, yeah.
I love brain matter on the walls so much. And I promise I'm perfectly sane, by the way. But, like, I just really enjoy that.
You promised that last time, too, I think.
Oh. Well, deja vu, buddy.
This is not the only time you've asserted your sanity.
I want everyone to know that I promise I do not put brain matter on walls for fun in my spare time.
Yeah.
So,
It does not.
but I really enjoy it, and I think that we just need more violence in our books. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm on it. I'm on it about the violence.
No, I like the violence too. I think that something that set this one apart is how, like, this is like more so than some of our other ones. This is maybe not Monster, but some of the others. This is like a solidly horror book.
It really is.
Like with the creature like coming alive and stuff, and the way that they described its face and just like everything from the beginning
with its giant tongue.
Yes, it was horrific. Like it's scary. If I read that alone by myself at night as a teenager, like it's terrifying. Even
Right.
now, I'm like 32. I'm scared. Like it was
We
scary.
haven't really gotten to this part yet, so I'm not gonna go into like full detail about it. But another thing that was kind of scary was the whole like snake fight. Like the little, it was like a dance battle,
Mhm.
but with snakes. Like that was kind of terrifying too.
Well, let's talk about that.
Okay,
So we have our deity, which is Krishna, which is an actual historical deity, and we have we're going to say Yaksha.
that's what I've been saying in my little noggin.
Okay, yeah, I'm no idea if that's how you pronounce it, but he is the first vampire and was birthed from a dead girl, and they have this snake battle where it's like a Cobra charming battle. It's like they have the flutes, they're playing music to get the snakes to attack each other. It's a really abstract, like if you look at this as being likely the first time, let's say, a young American is encountering this type of mysticism and religion, because all this stuff is actuality. It's not not necessarily the vampire stuff, but the Yakshini it's a thing.
They're like nature spirits or something. Like not even necessarily inherently bad.
Yeah.
No, there's like different versions of them as well. I feel like
Yeah.
in this one it's kind of presented as like they are demons, the end. But there's loads of different manifestations of them, and like actually just while we're here, I was really worried that I didn't. So where I live now and where I grew up has a really, really big Hindu population. So like Diwali and stuff is quite a big thing for us. And like when I was at school, we learned. In fact, I did Hinduism at GCSE, like which is like sort of 30 years of high school. But like, so I did a fair bit around like Indian history and especially like Hinduism. But I'm not sure from having read this and from what I'm massively atheist now, but like from what I remember from certainly when I was a kid, like whether this is meant to be the Rama and Sita, because it doesn't necessarily.
I believe so.
But it's weird, right? To like take the Ramayana and then like. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, it's definitely weird, and it's brazen, and you could make the argument that it's not so cool. But is it
because it relies on young readers, and especially sort of young American and British readers, not necessarily knowing anything about Hinduism?
Sure.
Is that why I'm finding it weird?
No, I think that's very, so like if this is your introduction, you're going to assume that either this is complete fiction and nothing ever was real or believed about this, or you're going to assume, well, here's this guy who clearly knows about Krishna and about these deities and the monsters, and so clearly this is what Hinduism is. So you do run that weird risk, and it is not dissimilar from positing that Judas was a vampire, which I've seen,
Really?
But it is a white guy doing it, and that makes it extra problematic.
Oh, so actually, I'm glad we're here. Because there is something, I don't know whether we want to save this for the problematic section, but it's one of the things that I found most jarring, having done Hinduism. Sorry, it sounds ridiculous saying done Hinduism at school, but like when you learn about religions at school, like Hinduism was kind of the one that we learned about, and I think Hinduism and Christianity and maybe like a bit of Sikhism from memory. It's been a long time, but like the way that ancient India is framed and the way that kind of Hindu mythology is framed is deeply, deeply odd. And especially the way that it's kind of tied in with, there's that whole section of her like talking about being like blonde haired and blue eyed. And then like the darker skinned, darker haired people were like the invaders. It's like, that's not really A, true, or B, it's not cool. Do you know what I mean? Like, so there's a whole thing about Aryan identity, like blonde hair, blue eye, kind of idealization of a sort of imagined perfect white race, and there's a subsection of that certainly was kind of around in the UK in the 70s around like neo-Nazi subcultures, which I know I've banged on about before, but like where there's kind of like this idealized imagined Aryan race came from India, and actually before before people that would now be recognized as Indian were around. There were these like perfect blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, and it's bollocks. It's white supremacist fantasy. So I was surprised to see it in this context.
Well, it makes me wonder, as a white male writer, if Pike was learning about these things from various sources, and therefore got a little of that. He got his chocolate in the peanut butter. He got a little of that Aryan dichotomy there in his research, because it's not like he could just look it up on Wikipedia, which is what I did.
Do you remember when we were talking about Monster? And I was like, do you remember? And actually, now I remember. And Cassie and Becca were getting really excited about the alien planet.
Yes.
And then you were like, oh yeah, there's this whole subsection of like conspiracy theorists that believe this, and like I'd never heard of it. And you know what I mean? It's kind of like that. It's basically like it's a similar. I mean, obviously, it's a different strand of conspiracy, but it's a similar sort of vibe. It's like it's a fantasy that speaks to racist paranoia, basically.
Right, absolutely. And I do get the feeling that he is not meaning it in that way.
No, not at all. And I mean, there's nothing that the representation of it in terms of the actual textual stuff isn't in itself offensive. Again, it's the kind of thing where it's offensive sort of in context rather than in itself. Right. But there's the book that I was banging on about before. It's called Children of the Sun by a British author called Max Schaefer. It basically it's about similar ideas. It's an exploration of like British neo-Nazi subcultures in the 70s and 80s. And there's a whole section of it basically that's about this idea of like the idealized Aryan Indian. And it's it's creepy as fuck. But yeah, I think you're right. I think he probably stumbled upon it by accident and it got incorporated into wider explorations of Hindu. Because he's obviously from other books that he's done, and I know stuff that he said publicly, he's very into his kind of mysticism, isn't he? And he's very into religions and all the rest of it. So it probably is a kind of innocent mistake, but it's still the sort of thing, especially, now that time's passed and you think, oh, maybe that wouldn't get past an editor now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Why don't we take a break and we'll get to Remember Me, our plot discussion, when we come right back.
Yes.
Friends, where else can you get this kind of programming than the PikeCast? Nowhere, that's where. But we're trying to keep the lights on here. If you like what you're hearing and want it to keep happening, jump over to our Patreon at thepikecast.com/Patreon and throw us a few bucks to join our private Discord server. Higher tiers get books, stickers, bookmarks, and even personalized shirts. That's thepikecast.com/Patreon.
Once, Osgood and Frost were the up-and-coming stars of the burgeoning paranormal investigation TV show craze before a hoax put an end to their friendship, partnership, and television careers. Now, over a decade later, Prudence Osgood is a barely functioning alcoholic ghost hunter for hire. Her yearning for mystery and adventure is reignited when she receives a cryptic, untraceable email. She can't resist embarking on an investigation that tugs threads, winding through a sinister series of disappearances, her former partner's family, and a night 20 years ago when a semi blew a yellow light and nearly killed her. Reviewers are calling Osgood Is Gone a masterfully vulnerable and relatable 21st century horror story, and a bourbon-soaked supernatural mystery with sparkling dialogue that sticks the landing on LGBT characters, and main character Prudence Osgood, as tortured as she is clever, broken in all the best ways, and a true heroine for our times. Buy it today at Osgood Is Gone as a paperback, ebook, or audiobook narrated by me, JJ Ronvier.
We would like to thank our patrons of the PikeCast who enabled us to keep doing this. Desiree, at Libri Labra on Twitter, Irish Moxie, Stephen Daniels, who is at Stephen T. Daniels1 on Twitter, Pamela Licata, Jack, who is at Fruit Snacks on Twitter, Jeanette, Jenny Corrivo, at Audrielle Jade on Twitter, Miss Jamie Dillon on Twitter and on Insta, Nicole from Tattered Covers and Broken Spines, Katie Lilly, at The Haunted Outfit on Instagram, and Crystal Squires. Thank you all to our wonderful patrons, and if you'd like to join the Piker patrons, you can do so at thepikecast.com/Patreon.
Hello, Pikers. Are you enjoying the PikeCast? Good. Do you have Pike books at home? If so, show us on social media using hashtag #ShowUsYourPike.
Welcome back to the PikeCast. Now we're going to move into our plot discussion. One thing that really stood out to me is, as interesting as these dream flashback sequences can be, like the content in them is interesting, but they reminded me endlessly of the same thing in Midnight Club, where it's like you're telling a story, but you're really just giving us an outline. Like when we're hearing the history of Sita's relationship in life, we're getting all of these things are happening, and it's just, and then he did this, and he went to the town. So it's like you're giving us a treatment of a story. You're not giving us the actual story. And it did not irritate me nearly as much as it did in Midnight Club, because I felt this was actually part of this book. Whereas Midnight Club, it was just like, okay, now you're just telling us a story that means nothing.
Right.
And I apologize to the people in our audience who really like the Midnight Club, because we got some blowback. But here it's just like, okay, I'm actually interested. You have my interest. Give me another 40 pages in this book, because it's 198 pages. You know, actually be one of the longer books and give me more give me more prose about this. Have them have dialogue in this. It just really felt so odd that there's this important stuff, and with the exception really of the snake fight and the raising of the Yakshini, we don't really get any scenes in these past stories.
I agree. I am learning about myself that I don't really like the flashbacks in these books, but this one is a bit more intriguing, as you were saying, than Midnight Club, because it does serve a purpose in the long run, like about his Yaksha's return. And just like it plays a part in the story, whereas Midnight Club, they were just telling the story, I guess. So I do find it better in this one. Like I don't, like you said, it was like a treatment, so it's like you're telling me what's happening, but yet I'm not seeing what's happening. I don't.
Right. It's a perfect example of telling,
Right.
not showing.
Right.
And
I'm not a big fan of the flashbacks. That's all.
and, in general, I feel like I'm the same way. I watched The Haunting of Bly Manor, and I really liked it. But you get 6 episodes in a fairly linear fashion. And then essentially narratively you tread water for 3 episodes to fill in gaps. And I've always been of the feeling that give us a way to tread water during the other episodes, so we don't have to feel like, well, the plot is not advancing anymore.
Right.
It's like, yes, contextualizing is great, but the plot at this point, I want to advance.
I think this is the same issue as with, like with because it feels to me like it's written by somebody that knows that there's going to be at least a sequel. So I feel like there's an element in it of like it being deliberate, like information being deliberately held back. So there's a bit more like telling rather than showing, because maybe it's going to be sort of elaborated on later.
Okay, yeah, I could believe that.
But I think,
which annoys me for a different reason.
oh yeah, I mean it's frustrating as hell, but I definitely feel like it's that's why the information's withheld. Because the one thing that struck me as I was reading it is like, this doesn't feel like a complete novel. This feels like a partial novel.
Right.
Even the big denouement is like, well, she kind of gets blown up, but does she live or does she die? Even that, that kind of creating a cliffhanger. It felt like a cliffhanger that in a different book would be resolved in Act 3. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it's basically the Back to the Future 2 ending. It's like, that's not a satisfying ending. That's just a pause, so you can wait for Back to the Future 3.
Completely. So I feel like he probably knew that there was a Last Vampire 2, even if he didn't know that there were like 9 more.
Well, yeah, he may not have known the expanse of this series, but there was definitely intent for. I mean, it is to be continued at the end of the book, so there is that.
Oh, I missed that.
Now it doesn't.
I feel like that's quite an important thing to miss. Sorry.
So one thing I really enjoy here, and it is a bit cliche these days anyway, to deconstruct the vampire mythos and basically lay out all the things that people believe about vampires that aren't actually true. Like, I can go in the sun.
Right.
I can have a reflection.
Also,
I can come in without being invited.
This kind of goes along with the same things that I guess I didn't really care for in terms of like how he put the information out. I feel like he was like super info dumpy, which is kind of what the issue I had with like the professor and monsters, that he's like telling you just everything. Like, I feel like we could have learned that she couldn't go out in the sun or whatever, like by showing us once again.
Yeah.
But I did find it interesting how like there's that one part about the stake, like how I don't know if like I would die with a stake in my heart or whatever. I just found it, and I think that's really interesting how it ends when she gets. Am I allowed? Yeah, I'm allowed to spoil because it's a spoiler.
Yeah, this is a spoiler podcast,
right? Duh. Like at the end, like how it comes back around to the beginning, where like she gets staked with like a piano bench leg.
A piano leg,
right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I just feel like there's a lot of info dumps in Christopher Pike books, like every single one that we.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, and I feel like that's how he manages to keep them lean rather than like turn them all into epics.
Very true. Yeah. We get a lot of handing over of information rather than revealing information. And that is true about any type of writing for younger people. Is we're more likely to give the information than expect them to contextualize and understand it themselves. So maybe it just felt like more here because we are telling a vast story, and we're telling all these flashbacks is part of that vast story, and so that's probably contributes a lot to that.
I like to step into the information and like see it unfold, like in like a scene,
Me too, yeah.
Like,
I think so, and I think there's no reason that he couldn't have like taken, the way he did with like the snake battle or like the sort of the Yakshini inhabiting the body. Like, there's no reason that he couldn't have taken just like a few little vignettes, like between then and the next 5,000 years, just to like spice things up a bit. Because there's this whole thing of like, oh, I'm 5,000 years old and I've seen like the rise and fall of civilizations, and I was in Rome when, or I was in, do you know what I mean? I was in like ancient Babylonia when, and it's like, well, tell us. Yeah, like tell us. Also, I'm sorry, but even then, people knew that Bram Stoker was gay. Like, that is not a believable addition to the narrative.
Well, that whole thing about being with Bram Stoker, watching the moon launch, it just made me remember Spike's line from Buffy: if every vampire who said he was at the crucifixion was actually there, it would have been like Woodstock.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of it is vampire posing.
All of it. I feel like, so much of her, like, oh yeah, I was there. Like, no.
But she's also obsessed with sequels, which for the first of the Pike books that we've read that has sequels is interesting because sequels are mentioned many times in this book.
I didn't even pick up on that as well. Right, that's a neat little thing that I didn't notice.
Yeah, she wants Stoker to write a sequel.
Right, I remember that
she specifically talks to Seymour about having a sequel to his book.
Oh my god, that's so cute. Like, now that you mention
it. There's a lot of that.
Planning to access all these sequels when she's on Pluto. Like, I feel like she's not thought that far ahead.
I don't know if she's going to live on Pluto. She may just want to visit.
You know, in terms of the timeline of this book, like this was 3 years before Buffy. I feel like a lot of the kind of self-referential vampire stuff is quite, but I know Buffy wasn't the first self-referential. Sorry, I'm thinking like, that Leslie Nielsen Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Yes.
That may not be the best comparison for what I'm trying to say, but like the self-referential vampire lore bit is quite post-Buffy, I would say, or sort of like kind of concurrent with and after.
Yeah.
And it's different.
It definitely has that point of view, that feel of deconstructing, poking fun at it, but still also respecting the narratives that have come before.
Well, especially given how like po-faced Anne Rice is. I think, and again, I love Queen of the Damned, however I may feel about the stat, but like it's a book it's a book series that takes itself really seriously. You know what I mean? Like this, and I think this one slightly walks the tightrope between that and a bit of self-referential vampire lore-ness, because it does. There are parts where I'm like, oh my god, just crack a smile. Do you know what I mean? Like again, like you're 5,000 years old, like live a little. Yeah. But then there's other bits where she does make the odd sly joke, so which you wouldn't get necessarily in Anne Rice. So it's almost like this is that kind of intermediate point between like po-faced vampire, which sort of dominated vampire, certainly like vampire lit for, if you think about like something like Salem's Lot, where there's no one's having a laugh there all the way through Dracula Dead and Loving It into Buffy. And so if it is that kind of it's at that midway point. It's not sure if it's fish or fowl. It's like, does it want to be self-referential and like poking fun at itself, or does it want to be straight up vampires are evil, here's how? And it's almost that it's kind of caught in the middle, I would say. It's not deliberately camp, but at the same time there are things in it that can be appreciated through a kind of camp lens.
I find it very interesting. Now I'm just realizing this, that Ray Riley, the male protagonist of this book, has been almost not mentioned at all since we first mentioned him as a character, which means...
He's a male protagonist, though. He's not...
I mean, sort of. I guess not. I guess not, but he sort of is.
Ray wishes
he's meant to be. Oh, you're gonna go with Seymour?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm here for her not even needing a male protagonist. She's just too powerful. She's too good for it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like she does it all. But also, if there's going to be one, I mean, surely that, I know he doesn't turn up till the end, but like Yaksha is quite, I would try to say he doesn't show up to the end. He doesn't show up to the end in real time. He shows up earlier in the flashbacks, but like he's quite a interesting virile young man.
I mean, let's move to the Eternal Enemy and talk about Yaksha, because he is technically the enemy. But I found his appearance at the end very interesting, because he doesn't he has the vampire sadness down.
It doesn't make any sense to me that he ends up sad. So there's this whole thing where like I know he has that chat with Krishna, but then again, 5,000 years happen in which presumably he is just off like killing people and having a good time, and then suddenly he comes back and he's become sad. It just doesn't make any sense.
Maybe he's Louis eating rats in the sewers.
Oh, for 5,000 years.
Yeah.
Well, Louis or Angel.
Or Angel. Yes, very well done.
But I don't know. It just isn't. I don't know. I don't find that. I don't find that transition from where he was to where he becomes where he ends up like very believable. Whereas I really enjoyed him where he was just kind of off killing people unapologetically. That to me made a lot more sense. Yeah. If it's 5,000 years, surely after a certain point you're like, I am sick of being miserable. Let's just step out into the sun, or I don't know, whatever they do. The sun doesn't kill them, does it? Whatever they do to like end themselves.
Now that you're bringing,
well, yeah, they're not actually sure how they can die.
She says that like if they're beheaded or something too, she can be killed. But so I don't think he was just doing that for 5,000 years, because they say that he was like hunting down all of the things that he had created initially. So he probably spent a while doing that. And then when she was the last one, he says that like he wanted to let her live for a while. He wanted to give her time because he loves her and she's so beautiful to him, and he just let her exist in the world doing her own thing, like in England and in France, like all the places she said she went. And I imagine like he was doing his own thing too, because she said like a few hundred years before she had heard that he had been like burned at the stake because they thought he was witches. So obviously he was up to some shenanigans in that place, becoming, acting like a witch or whatever. Like, so I don't think he was necessarily I think maybe he got sadder the more he went, because he knew because of Krishna, he had to defeat her. He had to kill her, and he loves her. So he didn't want to do that. So he just, by the end, he's just like, I'm tired. I have to do this. I don't want to do this, but we're going to both die now.
I kind of want to read a book of his shenanigans now. Like, I wonder if any
Oh,
of the
yeah.
sequels. Yeah, because like I am for the killing, like you were saying, and like that would be way more entertaining is to see this guy killing other vampires. Like, I'm here for it. Like, he could just behead them all. Anyway, sorry, I'm talking about killing again. But
So that makes it
I feel like
late.
if there is anything that fan fiction is built for, it is this.
yes,
Like,
Cassie has like
it's
a whole
right.
book of fan fiction coming. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I have a legitimate novella planned out for our space vampires. I'm not
excited.
fucking with y'all. Space cannibal
Oh, I
vampires.
love it.
You could just do an anthology series about fiction inspired by Christopher Pike.
That would be nice.
I should. I mean, ultimately, the story that I have the outline for has nothing to do with Monster, other than that, like they eat people. It's not even really focused on the iron in their blood so much. But
We did get a little of that in this book. Did you notice? There were a few sentences about the discovery of iron in the blood and magnetism.
Yeah.
he's
Oh,
obsessed.
did I see that?
It was very minor, and he didn't dwell on it, but clearly he was thinking about it.
He was rubbing his hands together, thinking of Monster.
Yeah, indeed.
Oh my gosh! I was just gonna make an inappropriate joke. I wasn't making the joke to be funny. But like, because we remember how in the problematic section of Monster, we were like, wow, this isn't the right name and the right words you should be using for this. And then it's like he switched. He's like, okay.
No, I totally see that. It's a similar sort of vibe, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because it's with Monster, I felt like I was only really aware of it with the daughter, that runs the gift shop, or the
Right.
granddaughter, or whatever it is. But again, I'm British, so I don't. There are nuances of representations of Native American culture, for example, or I thought American Indian culture. I know that there was a conversation afterwards with Jax about how, again, like whether it is Native American or whether it's American Indian, or how people define themselves. But
Right.
because I'm British, I feel like however much I'm in the US, I'm still to some extent not as familiar with the nuances of that as I am with, say, sort of certainly like British Asian discourse, for example, or you know what I mean, like the way that. Especially, I think living somewhere that has a massive Indian population, so like my grandmother was Indian, for example, and like the meta, but you know what I mean. Like I've certainly like grown up around Hinduism in a way that I know nothing at all about Native American culture. So like when I was at school, we did like Rama and Sita. There was like around the Diwali time, like there was a play about Rama and Sita. So I'm like, that's reading this. It's like, oh, that's not quite right. Whereas,
and that's really interesting too, because here we wouldn't. I mean, I don't know about Cooper and Becca, but I did not learn about any of that,
No,
like
I
any
didn't either.
like culture from India. Like my first brush with that was Christopher Pike's books in general.
I do think maybe there's something in that him kind of like exploring non-US cultures or indigenous US cultures, or I mean, I don't know what he's done in other books either, because my reading of him stops at 1994, but like, you know what I mean? Like basically going cultures that are not white American culture and seeing what he can find there and exploring kind of associated kind of religions and mythologies and spiritualities, and then playing with them a bit. I don't want to use a word, but I think we all know where I'm going with that.
I feel like, and this is, again, I'm going to say as someone who's done something similar, he feels like he wants more representation in fiction. So he puts it in, but he doesn't necessarily get direct input from the communities themselves. So his is a white perspective on these communities, but he puts them in with the intention of them being representative in a positive way.
I think that's fair, because I don't feel like he's ever. I mean, from what I've read, it doesn't seem malicious or like that he is intentionally trying to paint other people in a poor light. Other than, again, that girl in the gift shop who I didn't like her depiction very much, but. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, and similar to the different things that he puts with, like sexuality, I feel like he is trying to be inclusive, which given the time, like I feel like that is a nice thing, but I do definitely think like a sensitivity reader, just other people who are maybe in those communities reading that would have.
Yeah, I think it's that thing again of like, oh, would this be published now? You know, there's sort of like, oh, would this be past an editor? In the same way that, you know, like giving Seymour AIDS from blood transfusion, like would that fly now? Or probably not, given the distance that we've got from the certainly discourse around AIDS in the US and the UK around that time. I mean, I think probably I'm more aware of that as well because I'm gay, you know, and I remember being gay I'm not a gay man, but, you know, I remember being gay in the 90s and all of that, you know, that kind of fear and the moral panics around AIDS and HIV. Right. And it's like, maybe don't do that. But obviously, you know, if you're not gay and you weren't then, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I can explore. I suppose maybe with all of this, there's a sense of like, oh, I will explore these things. But because, I mean, I think Cassie, you said it quite well, right? Like, because he's not of that, he's just exploring it and sort of slightly stumbling around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's exploring it as a tourist.
Yes.
Which is both a positive and a negative at the same time, then.
Well, it's also exposure, isn't it? It's like, so I mean, probably, to be honest, like, I think I'd said this with Monster, but like Monster was probably the first time, other than, I think I'd watched Flatliners by then, but it was probably my first exposure to like the idea of the Vietnam War, for example, you know, and like the, you know, sort of the US and Vietnam stuff. Right. Whereas obviously if you're American, then you're steeped in that. And
right, absolutely.
So I think there's something interesting to be said for exposing younger readers to stuff that they wouldn't necessarily have come across previously, but equally it isn't probably the way he would handle it now, or that someone else would handle it now.
No, I think that's a for sure, yeah.
And I think that's the importance too of like the focus on like own voices, authors and stuff now, like being able to share their stories from a perspective that is true to it.
Absolutely.
That's some deep conversation right there.
So, we got way more serious for a bit on this one.
Sorry, it's like we need to get back to the brains on the wall.
No.
We need to just start cackling again.
Okay, so I want to move into Thirst, but I want to preface this by saying, for once, I don't actually have any highlighted quotes for the section about titillation and sexuality in Pike's world.
I mean, vampires
and it's not because there's not sex in this book. It's just that there's not the goofy sex that usually accompanies Pike's work.
Right. Vampires like it hot, though, so she does get her dirty on.
They do.
Yeah. and she's very fluid with her sexuality. Like, I believe she says, you know, if he wants to have sex, I will have sex, or something like that.
It's not very hot, though, is it? It's quite like...
No, it's not. She seems rather bored with it. But I mean, 5,000 years old, maybe it would be.
I would like...
Maybe, but I
have a correction to that. It is hot because they are next to a fireplace. Thank you.
That is true, and previously in a hot tub.
Yes.
Well, some vampires do like it hot.
Yes.
I was so conflicted with this because they have that like little hot tub scene where on one hand I was like, ooh, like are they or are they not, you know? And there's like that little bit of like titillation, but then at the same time, obviously he's in like a very like him and his girlfriend are in like a relationship with each other. Like they're not, you know, stepping out with anybody. That's not something they've agreed on. So I'm very much like, don't cheat on your girlfriend, dude. Like, don't cheat on your fucking girlfriend. I'm going to be so mad at you if you cheat on your girlfriend right now. And then to her, I'm like angry. And I'm like, I liked you. What are you doing? Stop being gross. Like, get out of here with that stuff. And then, you know, I don't know what happened. She just lost the mood for some reason. There was like a flashback or something, right? And then she's like, let's go inside. And I'm like, fuck, thank you. Like, God.
I mean, they do have sex before she turns him into a vampire, right?
Yes.
Oh, they do, don't they? Like by the fire.
Yeah.
Wait, they do?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then like, yes, there's definitely.
But it's okay because Pat is a non-character by that point in the book.
I thought they were just making it like a sexual scene, but I thought it was just them putting like a transfusion of blood. I didn't know that do they specify that they're doing, because I know that they said like it felt like really good or whatever, but like I thought that was the blood replacing the blood.
There's this part that says, we lie down together and the sex is a wonder to him as well as to me.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dude. Sorry, that I didn't look in my head. There was no sex in here. So when you guys were like, she has sex, I was like, allegedly, like, I mean, she had a baby 5,000 years ago, but what about since then? We didn't get any
They
specifics.
bluntly said sex, bro.
Okay.
I don't know what I did with my eyes at that moment. I think I was like, oh, blood, more blood, like veins,
mean,
and I
respect.
just must have skipped. Yeah.
Okay. Call me old and cynical, if you will. Obviously not as old as her, but like, really, was it a wonder? Was it?
Yeah, I don't buy that either.
No.
Because Pat has already said that she is more than he can handle, which to me indicates he is fairly white bread, milk toast,
Right, I mean, you could not imagine a more vanilla girlfriend than Pat, so I feel like
Right,
the bar's
exactly.
pretty low to begin with.
If she were being a bit territorial, though, I feel like that's something that a girl would say to another girl, to be like, no, I rock his world, like he doesn't need anything from you, lady. Like that sort of vibe. That's what I got from that, instead of her actually.
Is this like Mary Who Makes Wonderful Love? Is it that sort of vibe? Like, okay, I'm seeing that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would be threatened by that assertion.
I mean,
Nat, I am right there with you, though, Nat. There is no way that after 5,000 years of sex, this guy is blowing her mind.
No
way.
No. I mean, the whole idea of him is, I find their entire relationship absurd. Like, sorry, that sounded so harsh. But no, I meant it, actually. I stand by that. I find it absurd. Like, he's just this, like, I don't think I'd have found him attractive if I was Pat. So the idea that this, like, 5,000-year-old vampire it's just, even if he is the reincarnation of Rama, which, no.
Let's move to Die Softly. And aside from the problematic things we've already talked about, I didn't actually get a lot of Pike moralization and problematic nature in this book. How about you all?
So her being, I don't think I'd have noticed if he didn't harp on about it as much, but like her being very pale, blonde, and blue-eyed, I found slightly problematic. And I wouldn't have found it at all problematic had he not explicitly situated her in Hindu mythology.
Right. Directly in it.
Yeah, and at the source of it. You know what I mean? But then there's the whole section where he talks about like that she was the original, like her people were the original Indians, these blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, and it's like it's so problematic. Yeah. That bit is so problematic, and I wish it's a bit, like that shit in a glass of water thing. Like you can take the shit out of a glass of water, but you still knew that the shit was in it. It's like that.
I have never heard that.
Oh my god,
that is amazing.
It makes
sense. It's like, would you? Well, no, but it's like, would you still drink the water? Like you wouldn't, because you knew that there was a shit in it. It's like that. It's like, I wish I could excise that strand of the narrative from the narrative, but I never can because I will always know.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
No, I get that, absolutely.
And it's completely unnecessary to make her blonde and blue-eyed. There is no reason for it at all. No one would care. It would have no impact whatsoever on anything, except that he wanted her to look like that. And it's like, you could have dodged that bullet so easily, but you didn't.
And he could have had his cake and eaten it too if Pat, instead of mousy and unimportant, was the blonde-haired, blue-eyed cheerleader that we want our last vampire to take her boyfriend away.
Yes. Perhaps after the two of them hook up. Yes. It could have been. And then
we wouldn't have had any of these problems.
I honestly don't understand, having reread two of them, and from my memories of like the Final Friends trilogy, the sort of obsession with blonde-haired, blue-eyed protagonists. It's odd. Isn't it? Is it odd? It feels like a McDonald's level of recurrence.
I think it's very fitting of American culture.
Yeah,
his obsession
on the McDonald's level, as you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, I think it's very, very like, what is the epitome of beauty and like the best of the best for this, and for some people, that's what comes to mind. And I think he's probably one of those people, judging from some of these beautiful characters. That and girls who can eat a lot but not gain a pound.
Yeah, it's like hot, skinny blonde girls that eat a good McDonald's. That's like, is that the epitome of American beauty?
Which I feel like now, like realizing this as an adult, it's so telling, like to what, as an insecure teenage girl, how I thought about things and how I viewed things and what I thought was good and pretty and attractive, and how that's changed over the years.
Yeah.
In the time that I've spent time away from these books a little bit.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, and so I'm appreciating the stories, obviously going back to them, but it's also, there's a little bit of like, wow, like now I know why when I was like 13, I was like, wow, I wish I were thin and blonde and like, prettier, like, because I'm Spanish, so I have like Argentinian blood. My hair is curly and dark, and like I have dark eyes, and I've never had like blue eyes. Like that's something that I couldn't, even with contacts, it looks a little funny. So like, I don't know. It's just, as a kid for me, and now when I'm reading this, I'm like, damn, like no wonder I had a little bit of a complex on some of this stuff.
It's so fucked up, honestly. This whole idea of like, this is, because I'm assuming it's not just in Pike. I mean, I'm actually thinking
no, it's not just in Pike at all.
All American media that I consumed.
Sweet Valley High.
Yeah, like the like blonde. I mean, it's the Olsen twins, isn't it? Like, no wonder she's a literal Aryan. Like that. That's the kind of archetype of American girl attractiveness. It's so fucked up, but still able to pack away a big McDonald's because well, somehow.
Although I was very disappointed that she not once ate McDonald's in this book.
Even though, as she explicitly says, that she eats food and drinks.
Mm-hmm. But not a single McDonald's Big Mac is consumed in this book.
Possibly saving it for the sequel. I feel like...
Yes.
McDonald's
I don't know, are you guys covering the next ones? Are you doing all the books?
We are, but not yet.
So I feel like the next books will be telling in terms of like...
Oh, yeah.
So on a minor level, will they eat a McDonald's? But also maybe like, will they explore some of the 5,000 years of backstory?
Shall we move into the season of passage?
Do it.
I actually have a shocking amount of great writing quotes here.
Oh, good.
And very few bad.
I got none. Is that why you say that, Cassie?
Here's the thing about this book is I'm being fairly critical about a lot of aspects of it, but I really enjoyed this. Like truly, like up near monster level of enjoyment here. And I think it's because it has some of Pike's most interesting writing so far.
Most of mine have to do with her being a badass. So in the beginning, she says, "A dozen black belts could corner me in a dark alley, and I can make a dress fit for a vampire out of the sashes that hold their fighting jackets closed." Okay, so the other one I had is, "Humans are seldom able to dwell for any length on things that truly terrify them, even though the horror writers of the present think otherwise." And I thought that was funny.
So this is about her being a badass again, and this is the scene where like Pat is, I think they're in the shower right now in that scene, and she says, you really are incredibly beautiful. You must have guys hitting on you all the time. And Elisa goes, "I don't mind. I just hit them back hard." And I just feel like I want that like tattooed to my forehead, I think, because I really appreciate that.
I both appreciate that quote and also didn't realize that she and Pat were in the shower together. I feel like
in the locker room, at least. It might have been a locker room.
There's at least nudity going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she was appreciating her body.
Yes.
There's a lot of that in Pike as well. Sorry, just as a side note. There's a lot of like ostensibly straight women visibly checking out the bodies of other straight women. Is this another aspect of American culture that I'm like gleefully unaware of? Or is it a thing? Like, when I was at school,
I can't speak as a straight woman, so I really don't know about that. I'm definitely checked out girls my whole life.
In American schools, is it like? Because I know growing up in the UK, it's like I stopped doing PE when I was like 13 or 14 because I was shit at it. But like you don't look at other people's bodies. Aside from the whole like, oh, you're a lesbian aspect of it, which was certainly a thing in the early to mid 90s. Like it's also, I don't know, I think people had a lot of body hang-ups and you wouldn't want to, do you know what I mean? Like it.
Yeah, that's what I think. Like for me, it was more of an insecurity thing in my school. Like a lot of the girls would go to like a bathroom stall or something to try to change in privacy because they didn't want other people to see them.
Yeah, that's how it was
So
here
it's like
too.
it's.
But on TV, they're always like changing like openly and like in Carrie and stuff, you know, like just like taking their clothes off, boobs like
Yes.
everywhere, like talking, having conversations. I don't do that. Like I'm like I can't have a conversation boobs out like that just like normally in the middle of my day. Like I don't know, that
Oh,
it feels weird for
To
me.
be honest, I
the thing,
don't care
I mean, obviously,
now.
I don't. No, I'm the
Now I
same
feel
way.
like I'm like staring with two sets of eyes and I'm like, which one are you gonna make eye contact with? You know, like it just feels awkward and weird.
Right now, I feel like I would just
Like
take
if
my
you're in
shirt
bed
off
with
and not
someone,
even worry about it.
right? But like I don't
But
know.
yeah, in high school, I was
No,
very
totally.
insecure and kept
Yeah.
that to myself.
So I wonder whether maybe
I-
that's another Pike thing where he's like a bit, where you know, in the same way that he's not Indian, he's not Native American, he's not a teenage girl, like
That's true. He's not.
dipping a toe into a perception he has of American girl culture, where they're constantly getting their kit off in front of each other and checking each other out unabashedly, where actually in reality nobody's doing that. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I guess this is our listener question then for this episode is, did you look at other naked people in the locker room and were you actually naked? Because there's always that confident person naked in the locker room that is sort of like aggressively naked.
well, it's not even looking, is it? It's the commenting. There seems to be a thread in the Pikes
Yes,
that I've
yeah,
read where
that's
it's like,
true.
"Oh,
That's true.
looking good there, love." Do you know what I mean? It's like that would never have happened. Certainly when I was at school, like just never.
No, I have a question. Then in the same vein of like him not really knowing that that's not really what happens in girls' locker rooms based on like because you watch it on TV. When guys go to the bathrooms, do they really like have conversations over the urinals or is that not a thing?
It happens.
Oh, it is. Okay, so I guess that's not just TV. That's true.
No, it happens. You don't want it to happen.
Oh, it's not. It's awkward, right? Is that
It's
an
awkward. It's always awkward.
That seems like the locker room thing. It just seems awkward. Like you don't want that to happen.
I would not want it. I definitely. I mean, I actually no. I wouldn't mind now because I to be honest, I would be more uncomfortable having to go to the gym than I would be changing in the changing room. So, like, I hate.
I just want to stay home.
Yeah, sorry. I feel like there is definitely a consistent theme of his understanding of American teen girl culture that perhaps does not chime with how American teen girl culture was in the late 80s, early 90s.
But I think it's really interesting because, as we've said multiple times, like the people like us reading these books as younger people, we weren't out living like full lives. Like we weren't out being super social. We weren't going to parties. So as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old reading these books, I thought that was how it was going to be. Like I thought this is how it should be. And then when it's not that way and when everybody's actually really insecure and if you look too long at somebody, you get insulted and called gay and you're just like, what? I was like, I mean, I was looking at you, but I wasn't trying to like do anything to you, you know? Like, why are you being mean suddenly and yelling at me? Like, that's how it would really happen. So, and then you think there's something wrong with you because you're like, what did I do wrong? They're doing it in this book and it's normal for them. Like, why am I weird when I do it?
Yeah.
Totally. Oh my God. And then you start to think like, oh my God, is it because they know that I mean, it's like you're not actually checking them out, but it's like there is, you know, you can imagine a situation in which you might be checking out a woman.
Yeah.
Do they
And
know?
it's so much, a lot of it's curiosity too, because you're teenagers. You're like, you only look at your body mostly, and then you see somebody else, and it's like that person has different, you know, breasts than me. That person has a different build than me. Like it's interesting, and you're not exposed to a lot of it at that age. And then kids can just be really mean. And yeah, I don't know. That was a little side therapy.
No, that's really big.
Right there with you. And also, just actually on a related note, I still find it really odd that like, well, it's certainly really odd that like in say like the early mid 90s there was that whole, you know, like paranoia that like lesbians might be checking people out when you're getting ready. Even now, like as an adult, there is nothing hot about being in a changing room and other people getting changed next to you. And maybe I'm missing something, but like it's a bunch of people that have like sweaty clothes sticking to them. It's not like hot sweatiness, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I am red in the face and just did an exercise class. Like it's not. There's a real misconception, I think, about how hot locker rooms are in general beyond teenage years.
I have a line that'll follow up both of yours about badass girls. There's just this exchange where someone says, "Who the hell are you?" A girl with a bad attitude. I say. I really like that a lot. there's a lot of interesting thoughts in here, like her thoughts on World War II. The majority of people recollect World War II as a great adventure against impossible odds, while it was nothing but an unceasing parade of suffering.
Oh, I like that, especially given Brexit. It feels very timely.
And she follows it up with, even I, a bloodthirsty harlot, if ever there was one, have never witnessed a glorious war.
I like it, but also that reminds me of something I wanted to bring up linguistically. She's 5,000 years old, and yet she speaks in the idiom of a 17-year-old girl in Oregon in high school. Why is this? She doesn't have like.
I just some of her speech, like she didn't use a lot of contractions, so I thought some of it did feel a little bit older.
I suppose yes, but if she's 5,000 years old, I mean, the language we're talking about languages that like only fragments of them remain. Presumably
she's around the world, Nat. Come on.
I suppose that's true. She did, and she did spend all the time with Bram Stoker. Like, who knows what she picked up? There was a whole bit where I wasn't sure. I actually had to Google Bram Stoker's life after that because it was slightly written as if not she thought he was English, as if Pike thought he was English. So then, like, I Googled it and I was like, did Pike not know he was Irish? But then it turns out that he did die in London, so it is feasible. Theoretically, it is historically accurate that she met him. But
I didn't know he was Irish. I just learned something.
Yeah,
I didn't know what he was, to be fair. I had no assumption either way.
The only reason I know that he's Irish is because, specifically in Interview with the Vampire, they call Dracula the crazy ramblings of a deranged Irishman.
Oh, they do, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
But I feel like it's written as if Pike thinks he's English, but that could be me. I'm willing to concede that could just be my reading of the text. And as pointed out, he did not have Wikipedia. So.
No,
I just picture while he's writing, Nat standing there wagging her finger like,
You know what? That's exactly what happens when I read them. You cannot imagine how it's going to go when we get into Final Friends, honestly. Like, I remember some bits of that book and my finger is wagging preemptively.
Wow.
I'm there. Sorry, carry on. Because
Okay. Anyone have any other great lines they want to share?
My third one was the one Becca.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I stole from you.
That's why I wanted you all to go first, because I had each of yours in mind.
Oh, see, yeah, I figured we would share them, and I'm glad that we could all like give one instead of me just taking them all.
Well, here, I've got a bunch more then. I feel like Becca is going to especially love this one.
Is it about murder?
And I have a little heart above it.
Aww.
His eyes keep straying to what I have done to the woman's head. A crumpled accordion of bloody assault.
Yes, I do love it.
Isn't that great?
That was beautiful.
The tears, the blood, they make a pitiful combination. That feels like Clive Barker to me.
I can definitely see that.
This is really interesting. It's between Elisa and Yaksha at the end. Then the line has been drawn, the sea meets the shore, the infinite tells the finite what is supposed to be. I think that's a lot of fun. Oh yeah, this one, here. Suddenly he believes every horror story he has been told since he was a little boy, that they all were true, the dead things hungering for warm living flesh, the bony hand coming out of the closet in the black of night, the monsters from another page of reality, the unturned page, who could look so human, so cute.
That one is so good.
Isn't that great? Like, that feels like King. And I mean, I will acknowledge King is not the apex of writing, but he's my apex of writing.
Oh, no, I totally agree. I feel like he's slightly unfairly maligned for not being the best writer, because some of his stuff is like lyrical.
Yeah, truly.
I am a fan. I'm a fan of the writing as well as the stories.
This one's also really interesting to me. He looks down at me and he feels as if he is falling into my eyes, into bottomless wells of blue, twin skies behind which the eternal black of space hides.
You know, I have to mention the fact that they're blue, right?
Well, yes, sorry. I do. I understand.
But it is a nice
I am a writer that is so obsessed with the infinity of space that I mention it at every possible opportunity in my fiction. So I
in
always
that case, can I
appreciate.
plug a book? Can I plug
Yeah,
Haley
please.
Piper's The Worm and His Kings? Sorry,
It's
that's
so
Yeah, you
good.
it's amazing.
Yeah, I will
Oh,
check it out.
Aw.
Okay, I have a what the fuck quote.
go on.
He is a fan of modern quantum mechanics and abstract art. He works after school at a supermarket. This is our hero, our love interest, ladies and gentlemen. A fan of modern quantum mechanics. Who is a fan of quantum mechanics? You can be obsessed with it. You can really enjoy talking about it and researching it. But who is a fan of it? Clearly, I have a problem there.
No, I'm a real big fan of, things like anthropology, just really basic ideas. I'm a huge fan.
I must admit, I do love linguistics. I would call myself a fan.
So you're a fan?
Okay, no, I would actually say I was a fan of linguistics too, though, because that's so interesting, though. But like,
Oh, so actually, sorry, I have another book recommendation then, because that's what this podcast is now. I'm sorry.
Get it.
I think this might be like the third or fourth book I've plugged this podcast. It's called Because Internet. It's Gretchen McCulloch. It's so good. Oh my god, it's so she's one half of the Lingthusiasm podcast people. But it's basically about like the sort of the new linguistic codes of the internet and how it's just fascinating. It's especially because part of my academic stuff was on critical discourse analysis, and actually in my job now I use a lot of critical discourse analysis, which is much more to do with like the power dynamics of language and like how that all functions. Whereas this is like it's using basically what I would think of as like a new lexicon, a new syntax, because I'm still a slight stranger to the internet, I suppose, which I know sounds ridiculous, but I think because it wasn't around when I was born, I didn't grow up with it. It is like slightly learning a new language. Actually, she's got a categorization for. It's not necessarily to do with chronological age, but like how you classify people on the basis of their engagement with digital media. It's really interesting. Sorry, anyway, I digress. Gretchen McCulloch, Because Internet, give it a read, everybody.
I wrote it down.
Yeah.
I love it. Sorry, I feel
Okay,
like I just had a little commercial break.
Okay. No, don't worry about it. Okay, I have a Pikeism. We already talked about the locker room and the slovenly food devouring bad guy, sort of, maybe. But the emotional undersell is something that I'm noticing in Pike. And there's two examples here. No, one example, I'm sorry. The other one is another Pikeism. No one in many years has said something as charming as, I like you, to me. That's
very sweet.
quite the undersell there.
I was like, no wonder she's in love with this dude after 5 minutes.
He likes her. But does he like her?
5,000 years for her, really, isn't it? I'm starting to think she did live in a cage and eat rats for that time. I was going to say, yeah, like the tiniest amount of human interest or contact, and she's sold.
Did anyone else notice that our heroine made a necklace out of human heads?
Well, that's. Do you know what's particularly weird about that? And actually, sorry, this is going to get my goat again because of the Hinduism connection. That's so she's meant to be Sita. Assuming she's meant to be Sita of Rama and Sita, like it's not actually fucking Sita that does that. It's Kali. It's a theft of Kali. It's a plundering of like the goddess Kali.
Huh.
I don't want to spoil anything for this series, but I do want to say that was a dream in this one, and it wasn't. He wasn't directly saying that she did that in the past.
Okay, so like it's okay.
I think a lot of the dreams he was having were symbolism.
Gotcha.
I don't want to spoil the rest of the books in the series.
No, we appreciate that. Spoilers for the current book only are acceptable on this podcast.
But just based on that one rant, Nat, I think that you might be less angry. Maybe reading. I'm not. I don't know. I don't know for sure. But maybe.
I feel like I should be tampering down my rage anyway. Like it's not healthy. Christopher Pike, if you are listening, I'm sorry. It's me, not you.
Well, I do have one line that I thought was explicitly bad, and it's not even that bad. It's like it's a spasm of pain grips Riley, a convulsion. His legs shake off the floor like two wooden sticks moved by a poltergeist.
Was that during the sex?
That was wait, what? Wait, who is this about?
That was a joke, but nobody realized it.
The delivery was so deadpan.
You really caught me off guard.
I'm so sorry. I should have used a different tone of voice, but sometimes I do that, and I get the same response a lot, and I'm so sorry.
I was just like, wait a minute.
No, I'm sorry.
But no, to be fair,
Sorry.
though, it could, given the framing of the sex, it could have been. Like, I think that was the part that made it even more difficult.
Hold on, I'm pretty sure by using the last name, this is about Detective Michael
Right, that's
Riley, not Ray Riley.
So this is.
I thought that's what made my joke even funnier. I know.
I'm sorry, I feel like I ruined your whole joke.
I ruined it myself. I didn't do it right. It was funny to me, but it wasn't. I didn't do it right. I have tears. I'm sorry.
I love this so much. I want to come back every time. I'm sorry.
Well, let's close the book on this one by going into the last act.
Yes.
And giving our final thoughts and ratings out of 5 pikes. I've realized that I have had to compete with y'all's ratings every time. I'm going first this time. I'm giving it four pikes and a hissing little Yakshini monster with its tongue sticking out and a big grin on his face next to the pikes.
Nice.
So, Nat.
So it's a 3.5 piker for me, I'm afraid. I think I like her as a character. It's the whole shit in the glass of water problem for me, I think.
I get it, yeah.
It's impossible for me to look past that. I feel like if that weren't there, it would be a solid 4 piker. Because I think there's some other problems with it as well. Like I do slightly resent that it's such an obvious setup for the sequel and subsequent books.
Me too. Yeah, I never am a fan of. Don't give me that type of cliffhanger.
Yes.
Give me a cliffhanger that sets up a new story. This is a cliffhanger that sets up the ending of this story.
Exactly. It's like it's unsatisfying on its own terms. So I think it would have lost a pike for that anyway. But it does lose the extra half pike because of the way it deals with the Aryan problem.
So 3.5 from Nat. Becca, where are you at?
Okay, so I want to begin with giving Cassie 5 pikes for her joke.
I appreciate every one of those pikes.
I got you. And I'm going to give this book 2.5. No, I'm going to give it a 3. I'm going to round it up. So I'm going to give it 3 snakes at a dance battle.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was actually worried I was being ungenerous, but that's okay.
Well, I was going to do 2.5, but it really isn't. I don't know. It's so hard to rate these ones. I'm just going to round it up to a 3. Definitely 3 snakes dancing.
3 snakes?
A dance battle.
2 of them for the brains leaking out the skull.
Yes. Oh, wait, I don't want to harm the snakes. Yeah, but I kind of like the brains. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, Becca, you're going to like my rating because I'm going to give it 3.5 pikes, but also a little half pike, and it's in the form of a bloodied, crushed-in skull on the bathroom floor with brains leaking out of it.
Wow, very, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yep.
Nice. Sorry, can I change what my half pike is? I want my half pike to be like her foot going through Ray Riley's father's ribcage.
Okay.
Yes, the cracked rib.
I want that foot. Yeah, so that's my half pike. Like 3 pikes and then a foot going through a chest.
Which brings us to the end. Nat, will you tell our listeners where they can find you and your work?
Oh, I will. So I write crime stuff as me. So my crime stuff is Natalie Edwards. I've got my the third in my crime trilogy, hopefully coming out beginning of next year. And I also write horror as TC Parker, so you can find me as that as well. I've written a book called Salt Blood and another book called Oppressive Feathers. I've got another, as discussed, the lesbian splatterpunk western, hopefully coming out next year. And now a botanist vampire saga too. And so, yeah, I write that as TC Parker, so you can find me at tcparkerwrites.com. I think that's me.
I think so.
And also on Twitter as WritesTC.
I will also say I just finished Salt Blood last night, and it's so good. So everybody should go get that. And
It
read
made me so happy that you read it. I love it. I was doing like a little dance around the computer.
I was trying so hard the night before because I knew I had to wake up early, and I was like, "Please, I just got to get a few more pages. I just want to know what happens." But my boyfriend was like, "You have to go to bed. Like, you're gonna be up in like 5 hours." I was like, "Fine." So last night I was like, "I'm finishing this book."
I'm so glad you honestly I'm so happy. I am literally doing like a little dance of joy, and now I'm doing like a static dance of joy by my laptop.
We love dances on the podcast.
I think Nat should do a dance battle against Basha.
The
Wait,
Cloakers?
I already forgot his name. Yaksha.
Sorry, I thought you were going to say the snakes. It's like I'm going to lose.
No,
I was like,
I wanted you to go against the person controlling the snakes. I think you would win.
I'd put maybe against a person, but the snakes would just kill me. Actually, there is something else I would like to promote. Sorry, I forgot about this. Listeners, Cassie and I are in an anthology together called Inferno, which is edited by Stephanie Ellis and Alison Faye. And yeah, Cassie has a story in it, and I have a story in it. So check it out.
yeah.
That's awesome. We'll put that link in our show notes for sure. Becca,
Yes.
where can we find you online?
Okay, so I have a blog where I talk about all things spooky. You can find that at astoldbybex.wordpress.com. My Twitter is also as told by Bex, and my Instagram where I post about books is Read with Bex.
And Cassie?
I have a blog. It's letsgetgalactic.com. I honestly have been using it a little bit less toward the end of this year just because this year's been a lot. But you can find me really, really active on Twitter, which is at ControlAltCassie, CTRLALTCASSIE. And then I also have the same username for my personal Instagram account. And then I have a Bookstagram account that's at Reading in a Prism, if you like bookish stuff. I also have an art shop. So it's letsgetgalacticart.etsy.com. And I sell art prints, books, resin stuff, bookmarks, coasters, just a lot of different things. And like Nat said, I'm also now an author with stories in 2 anthologies that just came out this month. So Inferno, the one that she was talking about, and then also We Are Wolves. So that one's a charity anthology as well. So that's it. Yay.
That's awesome. And I can be found at Cooper S. Beckett pretty much everywhere on the internet. Amazingly, my Twitter discourse has not become less political. So again, be aware. You can follow me on Instagram as well. I am thrilled to be able to say that as of this moment, this is the first time we've recorded a podcast where my audiobook is finished and available.
Yay!
So you can get the Osgood Has Gone audiobook on Audible or direct from me. And I'm very excited about it. And yeah, check it out. osgoodasgone.com. Cassie, will you tell our listeners where they can find our show on the internet?
Yeah, so we've made it very easy for our listeners. You can find us on pretty much any social media platform as at the PikeCast. That's ThePikeCast. We're also, we've got a Patreon, and if you'd like to come support us and help us, we like to ask for advice on things. We like to give little like sneak peeks to stuff. We have a side Discord, so you can just become friends with us and get to know us a little bit, and we can get to know you.
And I will say that this episode is being released on Christmas Eve. And
can you add Christmas music? Oh, yes.
Sure.
A little bit of bells or something there when you're talking about it. That would be so cute.
And I just want to say happy holidays, regardless of the holiday you celebrate, or if you celebrate no holidays. Happy time of the year, because we're about to get to the point where things get lighter and we have a vaccine here. And hopefully 2021 is going to prove itself to be a friendlier year than 2020 was.
Fingers crossed.
2020 over. Celebrations.
So I think that makes it official that we will see you next year. on the next episode of the PikeCast. And your homework for that is Christopher Pike's novel Last Act. So check it out.
Happy New Year and happy holidays.
Happy holidays,
I should have said that
everybody.
You survived the night, friends. You can peek out from under your covers and see the first blues of dawn out the window. Thanks for spending the night with the PikeCast, and we hope you'll join us again next time. Until then, Pikers, pleasant dreams.
Wait. I want us to all to do it, but really good. Let's do holidays first, and then
Wait, stop
We'll say it at the same time.
we're gonna.
Okay.
Yeah, we should do it at the same time. It's
No,
cute. Come on.
what was the
Let's say
plan?
happy holidays and happy New Year. Wait, not New Year. I don't know what that was. Happy holidays and
Okay.
happy New Year. Okay, ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Happy
Happy
holidays.
holidays. And Happy New Year.
New Year.
I got messed up.
You know what? Never mind. Happy holidays and happy New Year.
Happy holidays.
I'm so sorry I fucked that up. I can't believe I fucked that up.
You look like
I'm so
I think we should quit while we're ahead,
Okay,
everybody.
It's so cute. It's so cute. I hope that never. You know, actually, I live in a town that's famous for chickens, and I've been chased down the road by wild
Oh
chickens.
my god, that's so cute.
Twice.
Hold on, you live in a town that's famous for chickens?
Well, I'm using the word famous loosely. I'm sure nobody's heard of Fair Oaks, but if you look it up, like we have so many wild chickens that traffic sometimes gets stopped by them. Like,
Really?
and one time I was walking back from the post office before I had my car, and I have no experience with wildlife. Like, I hung lizards from my ears as a kid, but that's not the same thing as like raising
Which has
things
been
on a farm.
confirmed that that's a thing.
It is a Florida
the
thing, thank
internet,
you.
our
Yes.
listeners have confirmed that that's a thing. So
Thank you,
not
friends
just a
in
Cassie
Florida.
thing.
Yeah, you validated my childhood. But yeah, so I was walking home and I saw these 2 cute chickens, and I pulled out my phone and I was like, oh, cute chickens in my stories, you know? And then they looked at me like they heard me, like I had insulted them. And they like gave me this like cocked head kind of look, like they turned their heads to the side and like looked at me with one eyeball. And I was like, whoa there, buddies, like, hang on. And then they like started like walking up to me really quick with these little dinosaur feet. And I was like, no. And I was so scared, and I don't know what kind of damage they can cause. So I ran across the street. Like, I crossed the street and they did not follow. So chickens did not
They
cross
can
the street in that
actually be
instant.
quite freaky. So in fact,
They're scary. They got the one eye when it's looking at you and their head's tilted. It is the most menacing thing I've ever seen. Like,
oh, hacks. Oh my god! So where I went to grad school, there was like the campus was like really. It's quite sort of like picturesque, I suppose, in like quite an English way, but it's got like lakes and shit. And there are geese everywhere, like wild geese. And a few times, like walking across campus, I've been chased by wild geese. And they are bigger than you think. You think of geese and you think like, oh, they're little, you know what I mean? Like the size of a terrier or something. They have got big fuck off necks. And there's loads of them. It's never just like one goose. It's like, so it's the same with chickens. It's like, the danger isn't what a single one of them can do to you. It's that like 20 of them can set on you all at once. It's like that thing, like, would you rather be attacked by like 20 midget horses or one gigantic horse? I think I fucked that. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? It's like that. It's that sort of thing. They will all get you all at once. So basically, you are wise to fear them. And I'm not suggesting that where you live is terrifying, but it is entirely possible they could have eaten you.
I think so too. Yeah, I have nightmares sometimes. The little chicken eyes, just those dinosaur feet following me.
Can we go back to the lizards though?
Why? Everybody's so intrigued by those lizards.
While it is the first of what would become a sprawling series, today we are tackling book 1 only. But are we going to be Let me try that again.
I've got the weirdest taste in video games, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, and this is something like only like my boyfriend really knows about me, and people who are on Steam, I guess, and pay attention to what I play.
And not people who are
But I
not
play
Steam.
like no, well now everybody
Well, they will, but not yet.
I play some games that are very questionable, and they're like, I love dating sims, and I love games that usually have a filter for young children not to be able to play them on Steam. And there are so many of them, and sometimes I'm playing them and the sound is on and Rich is like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm playing. It's a game. It's not a movie or something. It's a game. Come on. It's just a game.
Aw.
So I just had to throw that
sure.
in there.
It's different. It's really different. Cassie, you're just telling us how you consume your porn. That's not
I gotta admit, that is how it
No.
sounds.
No, game time is separate from that, y'all. It's separate.
I respect that.
Well, just because you're not masturbating doesn't make it not consuming porn.
What did,
I guess
what do
Wow.
you
that's
do?
fair. There's there's shooting and stuff too. Sometimes there's a story.
Yes.
One of them is like this cyberpunk thing, and all the colors are so bright, and the girls look amazing, and they've got like these cool costumes and like these cybernetic like implants and stuff. Like not
This is
actual
not
like
sounding less like porn, I'm sorry.
Cassie,
awesome. It's so
I
cool.
want to make it very clear. I am in no way disparaging what you're doing. I'm just pointing out that you can dress it up however you want. It's still the way you consume porn.
I actually wouldn't mind if you like screenshotted some of the cyberpunk one and sent it to me.
I'm totally gonna do it. You're gonna get the weirdest screenshots from me, Becca. Just
I'm
wait.
so
And they
excited.
give you there's dialogue options that lead to
Ooh.
different, like, I'm gonna be honest, like, you can edit this out, but there's like legit sex in it, and you can have different kinds of like ways with different people, or if you piss some of them off, you don't get it. Like, you don't. They're like, no, not for you, sir. Sorry. Or like, ma'am, whoever you're playing in the game. It's so much fun.
Oh my god.
Oh my
I'm
god,
gonna
it's
tell you
like
about
Monkey Island for sex.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about monkeys, but for if anybody listening likes the kind of games I was talking about, go look up City of Broken Dreamers Book
Oh
1,
my
because
gosh.
that's the one, Becca.
I'm
That's
writing
it.
that
That
down.
has- They're
I was going to say, I'll just do what I'm doing now and
too.
Google it.
Yeah, no, it's got some stuff in it.
Can I just say that if anyone ever wanted to make a movie about my life, I want Matthew Lillard to play me. So if Matthew Lillard is listening, which if you were, I would be crying because I love you, please play me.
Yeah. Should we
I did that
send
thing
this
where I
to
was
Matthew
Yeah, will
Lillard?
you?
That you're
I'll write him a
requesting?
love letter and I'll read it at the end of the podcast, and then maybe.
Actually, if you do, could you tell him that I really enjoyed his guest spot in Leverage?
I will definitely.
Can you tell him that I really enjoy him as a human being my whole life? Please, I love you.
Wow.
He's gonna get
Wow.
really. This is not a Christopher
Him?
PikeCast or PikeCast.
No, it's. I
This is
swear,
the
I would start a
Matthew
whole
Lillard fan
podcast
cast
talking
here.
about Matthew Lillard. Not him and Paul Rudd. If I could just have two people to have dinner with, like a fun little, like, I want to meet you and talk to you, it would be those two.
Right.
Like, I love them
Actually,
so much. They're just so goofy.
He's so
But
much
like Paul Rudd in the sort of Clueless era, I feel like I don't know, I'm kind of forever stuck in that like sort of early Rudd phase.
That he hasn't changed for me. Like, I watched things that he came out with like last year, and I'm like, hey, Clueless. Like, again, he's the same person to me.
He is still beautiful as well, isn't he? In a way that
He
like
is.
he's somehow kind of beautiful in a way that shouldn't be interesting but is because he is.
Yeah.
I think
He's
Oh
such
my
like
god,
an
this is the
everyman.
Ruddcast
I
now, isn't it?
think-
Sorry, I know. Okay. Sorry to get off of the topic for Chad. I mean Ray Riley. I think that we should do. I would.
Look, I'm going to rein y'all back in.
okay.
Sorry.
I feel like I got to do it. So let's talk about Ray specifically.
Okay.
Like,
You mean besides the comparison that we were in the middle of to Josh Hartnett? You want to talk about him besides that?
yeah, I do. Oh, apparently there's a game called Midnight Club Los Angeles that was released in 2008.
That game is fun.
Not what I'm looking for.
No, it's racing. It's like cars and stuff. Yeah. No vampires.
No vampires. 94, yeah.
I feel like
Okay, I'm going
he's
to rent
gonna
this
literally
back to the
kill us.
book.
He's gonna murder us in a second.
Sorry.
Just
I would like to
Okay.
talk about the film Happiest Season, which I watched last week when I was sick, and I would like
Oh,
to know
yeah.
what you guys think of it. But this
I
film-
enjoyed it.
I liked it, but wished it had ended very differently.
The thing is, there was this whole. I really liked the first half hour of it. You know, when Mary Steenburgen's like, "Oh my god, I once took too many Ambien and then I bought a racehorse," and I was like, "That is the best line I've ever known in any film." I want the whole film to be that. And then there's like an hour of unnecessary angst and like coming out shit.
And pain too, and like, why couldn't this just be a happy, like, Christmassy time movie? Like, I was like, I get it's important for people to make, and I totally, if whoever, the writers and directors were like, this is something that I really feel is important, I'm not trying to tell them no, but like, I thought I expected something different too from the the previews and stuff, and just from the general marketing.
I was expecting it to be like a Frasier-esque slapstick comedy. And then I feel like that was kind of, like it was a holiday, sort of an amusing comedy of misunderstanding, holiday themed thing. And then that's how it started. And it sort of lulled me into this false sense of security. And then suddenly it becomes this like really bleak, angsty thing. But then suddenly again, at the end, people are like hitting each other with paintings and Christmas trees. And it's like there's the whole midsection makes no sense in the context of what bookends are. It was weird. But I did enjoy the slapstick and I did enjoy Mary Steenburgen.
I enjoyed Kristen
and she
Stewart.
should have been with Aubrey Plaza.
Aubrey. Oh, they would have been so cute.
Yes.
I mean, Aubrey Plaza walks away with that movie. And I don't know if you noticed, but Clea Duvall is the writer and director.
Yes.
And in the closing credits, Clea Duvall has put herself into a picture as Aubrey Plaza's partner.
I did not see that, but I am delighted.
I didn't see that either.
Clearly, Clea Duvall wishes she was Aubrey Plaza's partner too.
Well, who wouldn't? Sorry, but the overall judgment was that people enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it, yeah. I enjoyed it also that it was a queer Christmas movie that was just unabashedly what it was.
I did like that. I think I'm ready for one that isn't about coming out. But I think
I think we'll get that now because, you know, you have to knock the door down in little bits.
Just set the paving for it, yeah.
And then someday I will get my Frasier comedy that isn't Frasier. But I'm sorry, I'm pleased that I now know what people think. Let's continue. I needed that.
Yeah. Okay. I will say the scene at the gas station was just gloriously violent.
I think
Sorry, I thought you were talking about happier scenes.
I know, I did too. I was like, wait, what did I miss? Wait a minute. I'm so sorry.
I'm trying to do a podcast here.
Can we just cut that line as you just Cooper all the time? It's just Cooper Beckett. I'm trying to do a podcast here. No, dude, the number of times I make jokes and I'm muted and then I'm like, damn, I'm really not funny. And but then when I'm unmuted, I'm like, oh, here we go. Pat on the back. Yes, I am.
Yeah, Ray Riley.
Sorry,
Here's
I
a funny
cackle. I feel
thing.
really bad. Like every time I hear my voice on anything.
I wasn't making fun of you. I cackle. I have like this witch laugh that I hear and I'm like, oh God, are they laughing at me or with me right now? Because I sound horrible.
Can I just say, Cassie, I love you so much.
Yes.
You did not cackle, I promise. Like, and I didn't even hear the snorts.
And we are never laughing at you.
just when I'm muted though.
I don't know. I laugh at and with you when you discover something fun and new because that is fun, but never maliciously.
Good.